Alright, so today we're going to be doing just a basic today we're going to be doing a basic air monitor class. I kind of geared this towards specifically our department. There's hours that we could do on just air monitoring, different types, all that stuff. But like I said, it's going to be kind of specific to our engine house here. And so here it is. As you guys know, Brandon Gansevoort, been here for 4 years now. I recently just went to a class and learned several things, so hopefully I can maybe give you a little bit of information about, like I said, the air monitoring. Goals in this class, maybe we can learn, be a little bit more confident, because it's not something that we use all the time, something we can forget about. So, just reviewing it might just, click a little bit for us. They make, like I said, they make all kinds of monitors. This specifically, as you guys know, we use the MSAs. We still have the 5 gases on the trucks. That's a 5X. We now have the new 4XRs on all of our engines. But they make all kinds. They make the single gas monitors specifically for like industry, and they have the bulbs they have 30, 40 different kinds of they can even monitor like CO2. Like I said, this is more specific for industry itself, but we do have some of the CO monitors on our trucks as well. And then, like you see here, we've got personal or handheld gas monitors. 4 gas is once again going to be for our engine companies, and then the 5 gas just adds the chlorine sensor in there as well. Even further out, they make the multi-gas with the PID. It's not something we're going to get into today, but just know that that's out there. It's a way to really get even more honed in on where your leak is. And then with most of these, they have interchangeable sensors too, so you can actually change you can put a chlorine and get rid of your O2 and your CO if you wanted to. Like I was saying, the single gas, they do measure for anything from like ammonia, benzene. Really, the possibilities are almost endless. But this is our monitor itself. This is actually like a digital representation of the inside. These 3 sensors are actually whether they're in there. I got this off the MSA website. The O2 and the CO are all the same sensor. So if you need to know on a call, it's not specific to one or the other. But the LEL and the hydrogen sulfide are both different sensors themselves. Once again, they're interchangeable as well. So if for some reason we had a specific chemical in our area, we could put that in our monitors if we really wanted to, if we decided to do that. So they do have ranges on your MSA and your 4 gas. As we know, 20.8 is regular room air, but they will measure up to 30% of volume. So all the way down to 0 and up to 30%. Once you hit that 30%, you're saturated. So it could be 40, 50, 60%, but if you're at 30% anyway, you know something's wrong, and we need to mitigate the problem at that point. LEL will run 0 to 100%, but it's not 100% of the volume of air. So if our LEL is 5%, we go from 0 to that 5% is the 100% of that lower explosive limit. It's not the whole concentration of room air. CO, it'll run up to 2,000 parts per million, and then once again, the sensor is saturated. Hydrogen sulfide is 200 parts per million. The thing about these monitors that are different than the 5 gas is these are static, so they don't have a pump on them. They don't pull air into them. It's a passive sensor, so it takes 15 to 20 seconds for some of these chemicals for it to read it accurate. So when you're walking through, if we're just running through a place, you're not getting an accurate reading anywhere. I just put, I know we're all familiar with it, but I did put a little bit
You have
of
left the route. Please recalculate.
I lost what I was saying. I put just an overview of this guy. Some of the buttons on here. Like I say, you've got all your sensors right here. On button when you do your bump test.
You have left the route.
And
Please
when you do
recalculate.
your calibration test, is just used off of the up and down arrows as well. So once again, I kind of wanted to go through specific to this monitor, the O2, and a little bit more detail on O2, on our LELs, and on our hydrogen sulfide CO. Anything that's going to be over 23%.
You have left the
is
route.
left
Please
for concern.
recalculate.
Let me fix this. Maybe it'll stop. So anything that's over 23% oxygen enriched and anything under 19.5 is going to be considered deficient. It's going to be something that we want to, it's going to cause concern, right? So we don't want to be in an environment like that. 1% drop in volume indicates 50,000 parts per million of that oxygen. A 1% drop in room air is only 10,000 parts per million. But if you're considering 20% of that room air, it being oxygen, you have to multiply that to get your 100%. Make sense? And like I said, you can only displace air, not oxygen. I know that's something that they kind of teach us in rookie school is, if you have a displacement of oxygen, you may not know what's there, but you do know that there is something present because it's not an average, not a regular average. So on your oxygen specifically, you're going to get a reading over 10 seconds, about 10 seconds is when you're going to be able to accurately get a reading where you're at. CO, it's another hazard for us. I know I'm beating a dead horse on the CO, but it combines to our hemoglobin, which creates carboxyl hemoglobin, and it's a simple asphyxiant. One thing to notice though is there are cross sensitivities on carbon monoxide. So for instance, the hydrogen, you can get 48%, it can read 48% as CO if you have hydrogen in the air. I know that's a little advanced, but an ideal H of 1,200 parts per million, and then time-weighted averages, we'll kind of talk about time-weighted averages here in a minute, but it's at 50 parts per million. Hydrogen sulfide, I know we monitor this a lot after structure fires. It's part of the toxic twins, right? But it's also used in confined space as well. And then our LEL. So I know I talked about it earlier, that 0 to 100% is up to the LEL itself. So methane, I think, is 5%. So you're looking at up to 50,000 parts per million on that. Would be 100% of the LEL itself. The thing about our LEL sensors that's different than CO, O2, it measures. It actually fires a little bit of spark inside that sensor, and it can bust. But it can bust to toluene. So it's set to toluene itself. If we had toluene in the air, you're getting a true accurate reading on that. If we had acetylene in the air, you have to take that maybe 10 parts per million, 100 parts per million, and multiply it by the 0.6, the correction factor, since the chemical structure is a little bit different. The sensor just knows that it's flammable at that point. I did put a little video in here about flammable range. I know that a little bit unclear, when you first start the fire service about your LEL. You hear that you're safe outside the LEL, right? If you're in the LEL, you're safe. If you're in the UEL, technically you're safe, right? But at some point, if you're going through that zone, the explosive limits, you're going through that, so you never want to be on the UEL. But even if you're in the LEL itself, it at some point is going to pull itself back to you. So you never want to be even 1%, if we can help it. So I put a little video in here just to kind of show a little bit.
You have left the route. Please recalculate.
So my video's not going to play, but basically it just shows they put a flammable gas inside a clear cylinder, and he lit it, and you can watch where the flammable range starts here, but it eventually ignites everything else within that space as well, which it would tell you that LEL goes, it's still going to explode. That's really the main point that I was trying to get to. Our short-term exposure limits, these are on some of the chemicals. I handed out the NIOSH books to you guys, and they'll be in there. So we can an STL is kind of for us to make a risk-reward decision on, is it worth it? Is there a viable patient in there? Can we expose ourselves for the 15 minutes and maybe make a grab? Once again, it's just a tool that we're using to help us make the best decision we can possible. But the STEL, short-term exposure limit, is set by OSHA for 15-minute safe exposures to any chemical. Our time-weighted averages, they use this a lot in industry. This is 8 hours. It's calculated 8 hours per day, or on average a 40-hour work week.
You have left the route. Please recalculate.
The TWA is also sometimes in different books called recommended exposure limit. OSHA is preferred exposure limit, but for propane, it's 1,000 parts per million.
You have left the route.
That would be
Please
1,000 parts per
recalculate.
million in 1 work week, right? Our daily checks, I know that this is kind of recommended by MSA to do our bump test, and then a calibration once a month. On both of them, I was a little confused when we first changed, but on both of them, we still hook up the gas. So we bump test it, we have a concentration of gas, and the monitor lets you know that your alarms are going to go off on your bump test. On the calibration, it actually erases the memory and it resets itself for the sensor, so you know that once a month your sensors are correct because your gas is going to be at a certain level, and so it sets itself to that level itself. So I just wanted to kind of go through that real quick too. we turn this guy on, hit the center button here. It's gonna start firing up its sensors. It'll go through its checks. It takes a few minutes, so this is something that we want to do, prior to arrival. We want to do it, ideally in the engine, or even before. You really want to watch out for like exhaust. If we're setting it up outside the engine, we could mess up this monitor prior to us even arriving on the call. And I know that I've seen some people put these down by the exhaust itself, and when you do that, you completely saturate the sensors on here, and they're no good anymore.
You haven't left the route. Please recalculate.
Once again, it's going through its alarms, all the targets that it's set. It'll tell you the last time it was calibrated, and so we want a fresh air setup.
You haven't left the route.
In order to
please recalculate.
So the blue right here is trying to connect to a Bluetooth as well. It has that capability, but not for the iPhones. If we go up, we can do the bump test. If we go down, we can calibrate it. So I don't need to really go through all that, but at least that we go through through the monitor and just hold the power button to get it off. A couple more things just to think about. I know it's unrelated to the monitor itself, but we're still air monitoring as we go through a place, especially if we don't know the substance that we're dealing with. There's several things that we can do as techs to be able to monitor. You want to look at your O2 and your flammability. Once again, if you're ever in that LEL, you want to be cognizant of you are getting close to a flammable gas. We have F paper and we have potassium iodide paper. F paper you hang on your suit. If it ever starts to turn, we're in bad shape. We need to be getting out. Potassium iodide, we can actually activate it as well. We need to be thinking about corrosivity, and then we could be going through with a radiation monitor too. If we have, I know we don't have that capability, but we're going to be working towards that, because that'll help us cover all our bases. We at least, if we hit on something, we can start eliminating things that might be. And then it'll also help us consider, do we want to go into bunkers or plastic? So that's all I got. I appreciate you guys listening to me. So, come on.
You haven't left the route. Please recalculate.